Well, this year saw South Africa with several high-profile cases involving children in court play itself out. In the Western Cape, 3 adults were sentenced to life imprisonment for the abduction of a 6-year-old Joshlin Smith. In Gauteng, the parents of a 4-year-old baby Nikita abandoned their bail application as her death remains under investigation in Johannesburg. Tiffany Meek faces child abuse and neglect charges linked to the death of her 11-year-old son, Jayden-Lee Meek. These cases have brought attention to the legal processes surrounding crime against children. Police and courts continue to investigate, with some cases still awaiting further hearings. For more on this, we're joined by Dr Shaheda Omar from the Teddy Bear Clinic. Dr. Omar, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Good afternoon, rather. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. I'm going to start with a very depressing, rudimentary, but important question. How dangerous is South Africa a country for children?
I think the harsh reality is that we find that 3 children are murdered on a daily basis, and every 5 to 8 hours a child goes missing. So the harsh reality that is that children are not actually safe, that children are at high risk of being brutalized, of being hurt, of being violated. And you've mentioned the cases, the high-profile cases that we are reflecting over the past year, Joshlin Smith, Nikita, Jayden-Lee, and just looking at it as somebody in the child protection sector, we are faced with a symbol simply speaking to the fact that these individuals and children are generally at risk and are facing the issue of child abuse. Child abuse is rife, it's on the increase, unfortunately, and we are seeing that there's also child neglect, disappearances, and unfortunately the systems that are supposed to protect these children are not working as they should.
Yeah. Importantly then, we have to then start talking about, because those numbers that you're mentioning are quite staggering. We have to talk about how we turn this around. Let's talk about children going missing. Every, 5 to 8 hours you see a child goes missing? That's multiple children. That's 4 to 5 children in a single day. That's a scary number. Why are our children going missing?
So if we look again, I think we just look at the systems that are in place or supposedly in place are not working as they should. We find that it's only working partially and unevenly because there's an overload and undercapacitation of resources. We know that in some cases the justice system has acted through investigations, arrests, court proceedings, and child protection interventions. However, in other respects, justice feels incomplete or delayed, particularly where cases remain unsolved. We know that 23,000 children still their whereabouts are not known if we look at the research that has been conducted. Furthermore, accountability is unclear or disputed, and the outcomes do not restore public confidence and that children are truly safer. For communities, justice is not only about court outcomes, it also means true protection of other children, prevention of future change, future harm actually, and systemic change. On those measures, many feel let down. And these are some of the key challenges that we are faced with. The delay of complex investigations, system overload, as I mentioned again, capacity constraints, fragmented child protection systems, because there's a lack of coordination between the different government departments, civil society organizations, your community-based organizations. And when these systems do not share information effectively, we find that children are falling through the cracks. And what we have seen typically with the Joshlin Smith case, the lack of coordination, the lack of integration. And then we have to also look at the legal threshold versus child safety. Here we see criminal courts require proof beyond reasonable doubt. And this actually is very difficult because we are dealing with children who cannot articulate or give clear and coherent disclosures about their traumatic experiences. And then the secondary trauma and re-traumatizations, where the court process are long and intimidating, not only for the child, but even for the family, because there's multiple interviews, repeated interviews, media attention, like we saw in these cases that you highlighted, and the adversarial questioning by the National Prosecutions Authority, by the court, which often discourages reporting and cooperation by victims and their families. So the challenges are numerous. If we look at the erosion of trust, normalization of risk factors, and fear of reporting. Fear of reporting by communities as well because of the lack of protection of witnesses and fear of retaliation by alleged perpetrators or suspects.
Yeah, let's talk about the children being murdered. 3 children a day, you tell us, are being murdered. Do we have any sense of who is likely to murder a child in South Africa? Is it a relative? Is it a criminal? What does the data tell us?
Well, I think what the data is showing us previously, the whole propagation and approach to awareness raising was focusing on stranger danger. Unfortunately, it's become closer to home, where the perpetrators are usually known or have some kind of association or relationship with the victim. And if we just reflect on Joshlin Smith, Jayden-Lee, Baby Nikita, all of these perpetrators or suspects were people that were closely connected to the victim, so very closely connected to the home. And this is unfortunately a harsh reality that has dawned on South Africa. The children are at greater risk at home than previously believed. And previously it was always external risk factors that were of grave concern. But we are finding that more and more children are being violated within their familiar context or home environment.
Yeah, let's talk about the response by the state to this. We now know that gender-based violence and femicide had been categorized as a national disaster, and in it includes, of course, the murder and the abuse of children in South Africa. Do you think that's a sufficient response?
Definitely not. Declaring it a national disaster, yes, is a move in the right direction, but it's not sufficient, it's not adequate. We need to look at it as a national crisis, because then the approach and the focus will definitely be more immediate, and allocation of resources, allocation of budget is critical for us to see a shift and a change in the cycle of abuse against children.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Resources, and you've previously problematized the National Action Plan as one that has been completely underfunded. How much do we really need to protect our children in South Africa sufficiently?
How much do we need? How do we, you're asking a question of how long is a piece of string? I think a lot more work needs to be done on the ground, a situational analysis of the number of cases that we are seeing and what kind of resources are required. A lot of prevention needs to be done. Protection and prevention work is key. At the moment, as we speak, we've become a reactive society. And of course, it becomes a greater or a costlier exercise. But the importance is that an analysis on the ground needs to be conducted to ensure that if the proper programs, interventions are put into place, more and more children will then be in a safer space. Because if we have a safer community, we're going to have safer children, which means that if the resources are accessible and effective, children will not be subjected to this kind of harm, violence, and trauma.
Yeah, the holiday periods, particularly over December, are a particularly dangerous time for children because they're spending more time away from the perceived protection of schools, and they're now in their homes and the communities where, as you described earlier, we now know that the danger is not just a stranger danger, but one that comes from within our homes. What is it that communities collectively must do to keep our children safe while they're at home?
Well, the important thing is communities all need to be vigilant. You know, we need to go back to basics. Like I've said before, your child is my child. The spirit of Ubuntu, where people must not bury their heads in the sand or their noses in the sand. They need to look out for each and every child. And the more people are aware of the risks that children face, so the greater awareness there is, and the greater look out for children's safety, we are going to find that more and more people will report anything suspicious, because according to the Children's Act, any suspicion, doubt, or inkling of abuse is not a moral obligation, it's a legal obligation to report. And people need to appreciate and recognize that they will not be subjected to any legal recourse because a precedent has been set in law. So it's to appeal to the communities, please look out for each and every child, because, you know, we cannot normalize violence. We cannot accept that children are a vulnerable group, and because they are not in a position to stand up and speak out for their rights, it is the responsibility of each and every member in the community to respond immediately, timelessly, and adequately.
Yeah, Shaheda Omar, we're going to have to leave you there. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Dr. Shaheda Omar is with the Teddy Bear Foundation.